Hi, I'm Suzanne Goulden, and I talk about intentional living and minimizing and simplifying life. I just completed a 31-day minimizing challenge for the month of March, which you can see all the videos on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, any of my social media feeds. You can read about it on my blog on my website, all of which will be linked in the notes. But after the minimizing challenge, I talk about all kinds of things regarding intentional living. So for the next little while, I am going to be talking about intentional living and self-care. Now, I am about a year and a bit into burnout recovery, and this has played a huge part in my learning about intentional living and making changes in my life and making my self-care a priority. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about my journey, a little bit about, what the last year and a bit have been like for me, where I'm at now. Burnout takes a long time to recover from. And, while you're learning what works for you, there's always some setbacks and there's some hard lessons in making yourself a priority. And so I just wanted to share with you some ideas, some things that I've learned, some things that are working for me, because they might work for you if you find yourself. You don't have to be in full burnout to be applying these. I mean, I really would love to have applied these before reaching full burnout, and it would be really fantastic if you were able to implement some of these. If you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed and headed towards burnout, head it off before you get all the way there. At the end of 2021, I was basically pretty much in full severe burnout, non-functioning, spent most of my time in bed, no energy, no ability to do much outside of what was routine, and really was very overwhelmed, very tired all the time. So I had to learn to listen to my body and my mind. And I had to make some really serious changes in my life, and my husband along with me. He was kind of in the same boat. We were both experiencing extreme high amounts of stress. We had several things happening in our life at that time that were out of our control, but very heavy stress-inducing experiences. And we had to make some changes. So, I was to the point, like I said, that I was in bed a lot, and really just lying there because I didn't have the energy to get up. I also realized I was a reader, and I actually couldn't read any longer. I had to stop reading because I couldn't understand. First of all, I wasn't able to retain the information of the books I was reading, and this included both, novels and nonfiction. I wasn't able to retain the information. I would have to reread paragraphs over and over and over again and not have a clue what I had just read. So it was very frustrating time to not be able to, have activities that I could even relax with. I was a very creative person, and I had zero interest. I had lost all interest in doing anything creative. The thought of doing any sort of creative project exhausted me at the thought. I couldn't even get so far any energy whatsoever at all to be doing anything creative. With the exception actually of crocheting. It was an activity that, I guess because it's extremely repetitive, it was an activity that I felt I could do and keep up with, and was very relaxing. There was no, rush or pressure. I actually picked a huge project to work on, and it took me a very long time, and I could just take my time working away at that when I felt I could. So my self-care became a high priority. I probably hit my lowest point in November of 2021, at which point I made a couple of, I call them panic calls. It was reaching out to a couple of professionals, a therapist and a performance coach, to kind of say, hey, I'm in a pretty desperate need here and I need some help. And that was a really important step, was to be able to reach out to somebody or a couple of people who could understand what I was going through and help assist me. We also, my husband and I, ended some relationships that were the source of huge amounts of stress, and got that toxicity out of our life. That was really, really important. I also took some time off, and I napped. I napped, and I napped, and I napped. My body was very tired, and my brain was foggy, and I slept. I slept a lot, and it was what I needed. I did eventually get a part-time job, and I have to say it was a very kind of routine and mundane part-time job. The important part of that job was I could go to work and do my job and come home, and I didn't have to think about my job at home. Nothing about that job carried over into my home life, and so I could basically just go to work and come home. It typically wouldn't have been a job that I would really take on. Typically it didn't do a whole lot for my self-esteem, to be honest with you. It paid pretty crappy, right? But it got me out of the house. It gave me something to do. It was part-time. It was easy. And that's what I needed at that time. And so I just had to accept that this was temporary, and it was what I was going to do for a little while I was getting better. And I mentioned I napped, right? There was lots of napping. It took 9 months before I could read a novel again. And that was a really long time to go without reading. But it was 9 months before I could read a book that I didn't have to constantly repeat reading paragraphs or pages, or realize I had read for a while and had no clue what I had read and have to go back for right to the beginning of whatever my reading session was. So that was kind of probably one of my first clues that I was really getting better, was the fact that I finished a book. I was really, really quite happy about that. That felt like a major milestone to me. I really wanted so badly to write my blog. I write an intentional living blog, and I had some, I call them false starts, where I thought I had the energy to start, and I would write a blog post or two, and then again it would falter, and I would miss out on several weeks or months of not writing. Because along with writing was the same with reading, is if you can't put 2 words together to read, you can hardly put 2 words together to write. So I had to learn a lot of patience with myself, and that's not something that I'm very good at. I have patience, but not with myself. I like to get things done. So patience is probably one of my major lessons in intentionality. It's one of the things that I really learned was necessary for me. To be able to heal and to move on was just to know that this will get better. The famous quote from Gandalf, "This too shall pass." It was a long road, and I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting there. Last summer, I, wanted to garden. I thought I did. And my husband and my son built this beautiful greenhouse and garden outdoor garden beside the greenhouse. And I think it was probably a good thing, but last year we had a very late summer. Our spring was very cold, and we couldn't actually get to planting until July, which was almost a joke because we have such a short growing season here in Canada that to plant anything in July is kind of silly. But that's what we decided to do, and we planted a few things just inside the greenhouse. And after doing that, I was tired, and I thought, you know what? We're not going to bother planting the outdoor garden this year. We're just going to see how it goes with the greenhouse and have a bit of an experiment. And we really realized that that was about all we could handle last summer. And with it being such a short growing season, it was probably for the best anyway, right? Everything happens for a reason. And that's what worked out well for us. And even that, it was an experiment. I mean, we planted several things. Some things didn't come up. We had a great harvest of beans. I think I got 15 strawberries, 3 radishes, and we had a pretty good harvest of tomatoes. The tomatoes absolutely loved the greenhouse. But, you know, it was exhausting, even doing just that little bit of work. Although I did learn that I really thought that I disliked weeding, and even though in my mind I can still say, no, I don't want to go weed the garden, you know, nobody wants to go weeding. But I actually found it very calming to go out and even do the weeding that was in the greenhouse. We had a little bit along one of the edges, but it was very calming, very kind of routine, very rhythmic kind of work, right? And I actually felt quite good after even doing some weeding, and I found it very therapeutic to be in the greenhouse and watching things grow, and knowing that it was, you know, our work that was helping that along. It was a very nice experience, you know, and another lesson in intentionality in growing your own food and how good it feels to do that. So the reason I'm kind of telling you all this is because if you're stressed and overwhelmed, I want you to know that you're not alone, and there is a way out, but you have to prioritize yourself. You have to listen to your body. You have to listen to your mind. If your body's tired and your brain is foggy, you need to rest. And that's it. You need to rest. And you need to tell yourself you need to make the time for yourself, and so that you can figure out what you need to do to heal. I remember the first time I had a friend over, kind of into my recovery. It would have been in, you know, early 2022, and it would have been very normal for this friend to come over and spend the day, spend a whole afternoon, or, you know, much longer. And we would have long visits, and it was great. I learned a really important lesson in my recovery from that visit. And this isn't on my friend at all. This was my lesson to learn. And that she came over, and, you know, for her it was business as usual. It was a 4-hour visit. I was exhausted, completely mentally and physically drained after an hour. But, you know, I wanted to be polite and gracious and, you know, a good hostess and whatever. So, you know, the visit continued. Like I said, for about 4 hours. And I ended up paying for that with 3 days. 3 days back in bed, huge setbacks. Exhausted, absolutely exhausted from the energy that it took to visit, to listen, to concentrate, to focus on the conversation and to take part in the conversation. Of course, hindsight, what I should have done is explain to her from the beginning. Hey, it's the first visit, maybe a short one would be better. Or once I realized I was getting tired, she's a friend. If my friend was tired and explained to me what was happening and said, hey, I just thought I could do this and I can't, I'm exhausted, I would be more than understanding to leave and to give that person the space that they needed. I didn't give my friend that opportunity, and that was on me. So, set your boundaries. I learned after that to set my boundaries. And a year and almost a half into recovery now, and I'm still very careful on how long my visits are. They're longer than an hour. But, when I hang out with my friends, I try to really kind of gauge where I'm at, how I'm feeling, and if we're outside of my home, then I have a little better control over, hey, I think it's time for me to go, right? Rather than asking someone to leave my house is not always a comfortable feeling. So, I plan outings out in the community or at their place or something where I have a little bit more control over me being able to leave when I'm ready. And that's been very helpful. And that's an intentional self-care boundary that I have created for myself, and that was one of the lessons that I've learned coming through this last year. And so, a little something to pass on is it's so important to listen to your body and listen to your heart and what you need. I stopped cooking. I had zero interest in cooking. We had made leaps and bounds forward over the years in healthy eating and cooking from scratch and healthy food. And of course, I'm also a culinary nutrition guide. So I know about eating well. I know about good food and whole food and organic food and foods that heal. And we had applied so much of this to our life. And, once you start getting stressed and overwhelmed and out of control, these are the things that kind of fall by the wayside. It becomes so much easier to say, I don't feel like cooking, let's just order in or let's go out. And so it's only recently, and it's only recently that I have kind of regained that interest in cooking. And we slid backwards very far, but we did not bring processed food back into the house in any kind of big way. That was one thing we were able to maintain. But of course, I'm not sure it's that much better to be eating out more often, right, at restaurants and whatnot. So it's probably 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But recently, we've been able to make a new commitment to eating at home, cooking our food from scratch, buying our good food, making sure that we follow through with our menu planning. And it's been good. But it feels like it's stuff we did before, so we have the lessons, we have the knowledge, but it feels like reestablishing new habits, even though they were habits we had before. We're kind of feeling like we're starting over. It is very helpful that both my husband and I like to cook. And so we can kind of encourage each other, hey, let's make this meal together. Let's work on it together. So that way you're not feeling like you're putting all the energy in yourself, or he's not putting all the energy in himself. We work at it together. If you do this part, I'll do this part, and we'll have our meal done in a much quicker, much quicker amount of time. And that is something that has been working well for us. But again, that's an intentional decision. It's intention on both of our parts to say, hey, we need to eat better. We have to get back to where we were. And this is going to be more successful if it's something we're able to do together. So I'm very appreciative that I have, that support. And, my husband likes to cook and is willing to kind of work alongside me, or we're working alongside each other on this part of this journey. Because we know that good food heals. When you're in a depressed state, a stressed out state, and a burned out state, good food helps heal your body. But when you're in that state, good food isn't what you want. You want what's quick, you want what's easy, you want what you don't have to think about, you want what doesn't take any energy. So it's something that we had to work through and give time and kind of accept what was happening for a while. And I had to really learn to put those shoulds away. You should be eating better, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be more productive, it was should. And the shoulds need to be put aside. You have no choice, actually, to put those shoulds aside and take it easy on yourself. Be easier on yourself. Be gentle with yourself becomes very important. The choices that you make need to be intentional. You need to intentionally give yourself permission to not do this and not do that and not do this and not to have to do all these things, and intentionally rest, right? You have to listen to your body and your mind. You have to learn to tune in. What do they need? And then listen and put into action what those needs are. If they need to rest, then rest. If they want a soothing bath with nice music, then, run that bathtub and feel that warm water and let it just kind of whisk that stress out of your body. If it wants, healthy food, give it healthy food. If it just, you don't want to give in on everything. Like I said, it gets really easy, especially when it comes to food, to do what's quick or easy or snacky, or, I just want chips, or I just want cookies, or I just want ice cream. You have to intentionally be aware of the choices that you're making and intentionally do the things that are good for you as well, that are going to help you heal. That's really, really important. So a year and a half in, and almost a year and a half from when I started recovery, and I would say I'm probably 80 to 90% there. I'm energized now about my blog. I'm energized about the work that I'm doing. I'm, creating videos, which is something I never ever thought I would ever do. So that's new, and it's kind of become quite fun. I'm enjoying it. So I'm working with people and reaching out with people and teaming up with people and putting projects together. I'm putting products together for my website, and probably one of the most exciting things is my creativity is, back. I'm working on all kinds of different projects that are new and exciting. And I, was able to set myself up an art space in my home now where I can, be working on a project and leave it out and come and go from it. That was another kind of intentional thing, because before I was using the dining room table. It gets a little frustrating to have to pull out everything, put on the dining room table, and then clear it all off, and you feel that pressure to work a little faster to get your project done, to get it out of the way. Now I can take my time and I can do them right, and I can do them the way I want to. But I'm so excited that I have the energy back and the creativity of mind to be looking for projects and taking on projects that take more time and more effort, and the patience. So, you can get better. You can get better. I'm mostly better, and I'm really, really happy about that. And I feel good. I feel good about what's happening and the decisions I'm making. And I'm really glad to still see the changes, the positive things that are coming from this, the cooking better now. And I also recently started a meditation practice. That is not something I could have been doing a year ago. As much as it would have been good for me, there's no way I would have been able to sit and just focus on my breath for for any amount of time. I mean, that, takes a lot of effort and work. So anyway, so that's kind of the journey that I've been on for the last year and a half, and I'm hoping that maybe, something I've said here, might help you. And, I'm going to keep coming back, and for the next few weeks, like I said, I'm talking about intentionality and self-care. And so I'll be back talking about some other things over the next little bit, and hopefully you'll be able to apply some of them to your life and feel better. All right, take care.